stumbling down the road with Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff as she carries stones, digs holes, and wheels her shovels on her way. This road is the real path. It is never easy and never clear, but always entertaining. This journey has not been a seated event, as Bridgette walks, runs, stumbles, carries, digs, drags, laughs, fights, sings, prays, dances, kicks, screams, and oftentimes falls.
Hey everybody, this is Carrying Stones and Digging Holes radio show with your host, Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff. Sorry, I've been extremely sick, so if I have a coughing attack, I'm going to go to a video. So I've already, I have my tablet set up and I have some videos that I can play. So I was trying to really think about topics that I wanted to talk about today. And so we'll just roll with that. Anyway, you are listening to Carrying Stones, Digging Holes radio show on Revolution Radio, the Wednesday edition at noon Eastern Standard Time to 1 p.m. Noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I also have Saturday edition, and that is from 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio. I also want to bring your attention to our website, which is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you have all kinds of mechanisms in order to support us. Everything that everybody does on our network does it 100% volunteer. We just need the money and support to keep all the equipment and keep websites and keep everything running. So we do love to have your donations. So many different ways that you can donate. You can heirloom seeds. You can just toss us some moolah. We have advertising, archives, so many ways that you could help us and affect our monthly overhead. So we would appreciate that immensely. Also, while you're at the website, you can go to schedule, click on Studio A, scroll down, you'll see the bee flying towards the flower. That's my show. Click that thumbnail and there's a back page there, and you can find out some information about me and also the show and some links, and there's also a contact link. So if you want to contact me for any reason. Today, yesterday I had my guest counsel. They had some personal emergency stuff that has come up, which is totally fine. I totally understand. And so hopefully we'll have them on in the future. Amazing person, native, who are working with native seeds and doing native seed outgrowths. So somebody new that I haven't had on. So anyway, we just have to wait for the right timing. So today, I was thinking a lot about, I wish I was always, as eloquent as Max Egan. Listening to Max Egan, he always seems to have all of his information, and it's put together really well, and it's really calm, and how it's conveyed. And I'm not as eloquent as Max Egan, so there are a lot of things that I've been thinking about over the last couple of years. And especially how embedded we are, if we want to call it the slave system or the machine. I was thinking last night at 3:00 in the morning when I had to take my dog out about how, it's all dark outside and quiet and nobody's moving around. And, it's interesting that they have created a schedule. And for the most part, you don't see anybody out or driving. It's the training, I think, of the aspects of the system, have trained us so well, especially like in places probably like the UK and the United States. When I was going back to school for this technique that I do to the brain, one of the things that we studied was collective stress. And when the brain starts to lateralize, and there are studies that were done, like up in, the 50s, where, people would get out of high school, maybe people would go, not go to high school. They'd go work on farms or go get jobs or whatever else. But the main part of their brain that mostly in industrialized countries you would end up lateralized in is the left hemisphere, which the left hemisphere deals with the past, the future. It deals with language. It deals with technical aspects and abilities. It deals with survival. It deals with, maintaining a herd mindset, fitting in, people pleasing, performance, competitiveness, a lot of these kinds of things. I like to call it the reptilian part of who we are. If anybody has studied, and it's pretty certain that in the Sumerian texts, there are tons of texts and other, texts that have been left over that show that we were, created by a species and other species, that were prone to reptilian history, genetics, and those things were put into us along with the human part. And then we have stories of like the Cain and Abel, and Cain. It's very certain that Cain was more reptilian and had less humanity, and it's very apparent that his brother Abel had more human and was more humanistic and humanitarian. So, and those are the conflicts that have been going on between us, more the white races, which are the ones that were created and put here. And because we don't have any history older than maybe 6,000 or 7,000 years old. And I've read a lot of information from scientists that are out of the box that talk about things about the white race that, we've come along later and that we have not evolved here. Our genetics have not evolved here. And one of the specific reasons why is that we burn from the sun. We actually get radiation burns. So obviously the white race has not been here long enough. I know it's controversial. So in the 50s, they did studies of when people would be lateralized and go the right hemisphere. The right hemisphere is the, humanistic or, humanitarian. It's the omnipresent. It's the God. It's the omnipotent. It's the present moment. And it is the ability to, spontaneously heal. All of, let's just call it the magic, is in the right hemisphere. and it links us to being present and functioning in the now. And that's how that operation system, and, being able to access information through the right hemisphere. And what I work with is called the stream. And that's how I view it. I can root up into the stream at any given time with a point of interest, and the stream will provide me with all of the information regarding it. I look at the stream as, the great computer, the creator, if you will, the great computer in the sky, and it has all the information, not only from this world, but from other worlds and all dimensions and however else that it wants to play out. And it's only accessible through the right hemisphere. But in order to be human and be here on Earth and be healthy, we have to have a unified hemisphere. Hemispheres, both sides of our brain. And, there's so many misleading words in our vocabulary because the brain is not a brain. It's not even connected. Only by the cord at the back of the brain is it connected. But still then, if you take it out of a human body, it will flop open, right? Because there's actually nothing connecting both lobes of the brain together. So they operate separately. And there's this amazing PhD brain researcher, Jill Taylor Bolt. You can find her on TED.com, and I think her presentation is a stroke of insight. And she got into understanding the brain and how it works based on her brother was off. He was mentally challenged. And so this, helped her to pursue a career in studying the brain. At some point, she actually had a full-blown bleed out in her left hemisphere, a hemorrhage, stroke. And she talks about the events that happened that her brain remembers, because all she could do at that point was rely on the right hemisphere. Up until that point, she had been relying 100% on the left hemisphere. And now she had to rely on the right hemisphere to convey to other people. She talks about how she viewed her body. Everything was completely different than how she'd been operating in the left hemisphere and what happened from that point on. And one of the things that she leaves us with is that we have to step more towards the right hemisphere. So being human, an alpha brainwave state, is both hemispheres operating simultaneously together. One side of your brain works on your physical body, the operating system, one side of your body. The other side of your hemisphere works on the other side of your physical body. And you hear things, like in different kinds of, let's just say, shamanism type work. You'll hear things like, left side awareness. And that is because your right hemisphere is the one that has a relationship to the right side of your body. So if you don't have, think about a lot of the diseases that are going on. If your left hemisphere has been shut down, it's not operating anymore. And most artists are not operating in their right hemisphere. A lot of these people think that they're I can test people and I can see it in people. I can see how their eyes are. I can see how, different kinds of facets of their body, their ears. I can see where their tension points are. So I know exactly what kind of, at this point in time, after 30 years, I can look at somebody and I can fully assess their whole physical scenario. So But most of us are not in the right hemisphere. We lack the right hemisphere, which means that we're running more of a reptilian program. And we're living in the past and the future in the right hemisphere. And we're trying to, technically figure out ways to, manifest our reality. And the only thing that manifests in your reality is when you are operating in an alpha brain state, because you're bringing what is above to the below. But if you're not having any kind of operation in the right hemisphere, and the right hemisphere deals with the now and the present moment. So nothing you're going to be able to do is going to help you manifest your reality other than working really hard and staying present all the time. And this is one of the things that I think I teach most of. I do a lot of Zoom appointments and shamanism type training, but most of it is about learning how to stay conscious. How many lights did I go through? How many lights were red? How many lights were green? I checked out today. I have missing time. What happened? Oh, yeah, I was at the grocery store and I saw somebody slap their child, and it just threw me off, threw me into my past and, states of my own abuse. And then I just checked out for 5 or 6 hours. So those checkout points are not going to help you with manifesting your reality. They're not going to help you with your health. And because there is no present moment, and that's how the right hemisphere operates, is in the present moment. So in the 50s, there were studies that were done about brain lateralization. Mind you, these people have been these, controllers, industrialists, whatever you want to call them. There's lots of different names for them. They've been at this a long time, and they study our behavior so that they can modify our behavior in subtle ways. So it looks like they like to modify our behavior in ways where we just assume and carry out the behavior that they want with the least amount of us, acting up. Even though right now it shocks me how many things are going on, and everyone is just so operative in that left hemisphere that they don't see anything going on in the present moment right now. And if they were operating in the present moment, they would be flipped out. We have some serious stuff going on with the United States financial markets. I watch the markets a lot. I didn't used to. I used to kind of stay away from all that. But more and more, I don't get traumatized as much about that kind of information, and I take it in, assess it, and it helps me to try to figure out, the decisions that I'm going to personally make in my life, and what those decisions are going to look like in my future. And it helps me to put timelines together on, how many days are we out? How many days are we out for financial collapse? How many days are we out from the total food collapse? You have like the UN right now. Now we're coming into like a global food shortage, and even in the United States, all of the farms, all the big agriculture, last year's 2018 year's crops, all of it is gone. It's been flooded and destroyed. Most of the meat animals that go to market are completely destroyed. And people are just, that left hemisphere business as usual, operating in the past. And that's going to be their future. That's the only two things they're concerned about. They're not concerned about what's going on in the present moment. Like they can outrun it. They can't outrun it because they're part of the creation of it. They went on autopilot, and other people slipped in and are running their own agenda while everybody else is on autopilot. So in the 50s, the studies concluded that in the United States, that most people were becoming left hemisphere lateralized in the reptilian, which is me, money, competitiveness, and the more of these traits that they push, the more that this becomes, and then our offspring, it becomes hereditary, where these behaviors in us will become the behaviors of our offspring. It becomes genetic, it becomes hereditary. Just like with disease, disease is passed on to our offspring. Anyway, in the 50s, they talked about how people didn't fully lateralize until around like 20s. And then I think there were some surveys that were conducted. I have to think, because I did this program in Texas for the brain reboot to actually, what it does is it reboots the brain and it brings the whole body back online. And it can do amazing things. I went to these practitioners. There's very few of them in the U.S. But when I had brain cancer, I healed the brain cancer and the tumor and all of that. It took me about 5 years. And I didn't go to doctors. I had some blood tests run, but they really couldn't pick up anything. And so I just kind of figured I was on my own, and that, this, whatever was wrong with me would eventually, come unbound, and I would know what it was. And so, I got sicker and sicker. But when I came out, I always tell people, as long as you don't take their treatments, because that's what you usually die from. You die from their cancer treatments. So as long as you don't take their treatments, you have, a better chance of surviving. But you also have to get into that right hemisphere, right, which is the present moment, the spontaneous healing, because this is where the information comes in that you need to do. Those, in the present now, those voices start to tell you or show you, or things magically start to appear in your life that help you to move forward and get well. And most disease is because of left hemisphere lateralization, because it creates a seriously acid state in the body. It also, is me driven, so it will do anything, even not get proper sleep, not eat proper food, even no matter what kind of information you read. You won't be able to absorb that information because you can somehow think you're going to be able to outrun it. And then you're more apt to, work at somebody else's job, somebody else's company, and make somebody else wealthy for, 40 years of your life, and then, sort of retire and then drop dead. And, you have to realize, like, reptiles, they don't really care. They're not like the most loving towards their offspring. They're not the most loving towards, anything except for what they need or want at that desired time. So those, I see, these studies that came out as watching, the family units fall apart, watching, how children are raised, watching, decisions that people make. It blows me away that, the average person is making these horrendous decisions. Like, you would decide to, just have your second child, and you decide that you're going to go buy a house that you're barely going to be able to afford that mortgage, instead of living, more simply, so that you have more money to give to your children the things that they need. You could, do a lot more with raising them and have a lot less stress. But it's this competitive behavior that is catalytic to what our society is kind of dealing with. Anyway, so the studies, I think around 2006 that came, 2005, 2006, somewhere in there, started talking about that brain lateralization in Americans and people in the UK were now at age 5. 5. That means that children at age 5 were already being controlled and manipulated in a way, whether it was from hereditary genetics, from the home environment, the outside environment, probably preschool also was setting them up for a lot of this behavior. And they shouldn't even be lateralized yet, right? Because children, they run a program, the Delta brainwave program. I think they run Delta and Theta. Mostly Delta. Delta is the, deep meditation brainwave pattern that people who've been meditating for, forever, where they leave their body, they travel kind of other worlds, and they're downloading information, tons and tons of information. And so children they run this program until they're 7. So it's interesting, like we're trying to convert children to do specific things before the age of 7, when we know that they can't really do them, because it's actually going against the basic programming. And then after 7, under normal conditions, in a healthy environment, you would go into alpha, whole brainwave patterning, both lobe patterning, because up until 7, they're downloading all the information from their environment, what people are saying, what people are doing, so that they know how to participate in the world that's around them. So for them to be lateralized already in more of the reptilian dominant behavior is pretty scary, because they're not going to have any chance to fight off disease. So you start to see, in the past, say when people were lateralized in their 20s, you'd start to see, their bipolar behavior, schizophrenic behavior, a lot of mental conditions start to show up between 20 and 30, when they were moving into reptilian, left hemisphere lateralization. And I'm not saying that, the left hemisphere doesn't have a lot of things to offer. We can't live in this reality that I call the 2D. I don't call it the 3D, because there is no 3 about it. It's one way or another, right? It's a saint or a sinner. It's this or it's that. There is no 3D about this place. Now what's happening is, because they figured it out, and they figured out how to create structures that lend more towards us being, left hemisphere lateralized. And we wonder why our children have cancer. We wonder why a baby can be born and has cancer. Well, because the mother is left hemisphere lateralized, and she's incubating a baby, and the baby comes out in a stressful environment, doesn't really get, what it needs, because the mother is really not available. The father is not really available. Causes a lot of stress, causes a lot of emotional strain. And then, the baby starts to move with everybody that's around them, into left brain lateralization. And then the disease and the inflammation and the acid and everything else that contributes causes disease. And it blows my mind, because, I hate St. Jude's, sorry, but they just totally so piss me off. And they run these emotional commercials, these sympathetic commercials. And I remember the first commercial that they came out with, they were saying, St. Jude's. Oh, you're so lucky to have St. Jude's, to send your children to, because 1 in 5 kids in the U.S. will have early childhood cancer. Oh, and we have this great system, and then I'm going to add in my own stuff, where we torture your children. We use, modern Western medicine on them so that we can experiment on them because we're not concerned if they live or they die. And to us, they're just experimental. So we, as the industrialists, have created St. Jude's Hospital, the torture chamber for children. I mean, nobody asks. They just, left hemisphere just takes in this information and doesn't really bring it into the present moment, which is the right hemisphere, which asks the question, well, why? Why does 1 in 5 children get brain cancer? Why is 1 in 5 children? Why is that the statistic? What's going on? What's leading us to this present moment where 1 in 5 children, and the way that they emotionally control the narrative as you're watching it is like, well, we're doing you a favor. This is the best possible place that you could put your children. I don't know about anybody else, but I've been busy through my life, so I didn't have kids. But I do have a dog who is like my children. I tell people that dogs are my family and horses. I'm just kind of more prone to animals. I'm not a crazy cat lady, but I'm like, I have to fight with the vets over vaccines because they obviously don't read the actual vaccine reports for animals, and they want to just continue to vaccinate your animals. I don't do contracts, and I'm not getting into a contract. There are laws, old constitutional laws that say that you do not, federal law says that you do not have to have your animal licensed. Period. End of story. But left hemisphere, got to fit in. I have this living being, this animal, or this child, and I'm just going to allow these people who's supposedly in authority to do whatever the F they want. Oh, and then I get to go to the checkout line and I get to pay for it instead of standing up and saying no. My vet's always saying, hey, well, city licensing requires, annual rabies vaccination. Well, all the statistics that I've read, old reports say rabies vaccination in dogs can last through their lifetime. Other studies I've read said that rabies vaccination lasts for 7 years. And so, like people, these vaccines are supposed to last, a long period of time. You're not supposed to have to keep going in to get these vaccinations every year. But I fight for my dog. I don't know how people don't fight for their children. I mean, hold your child down so that they can jab a needle into him. I'd be whipping out my AK-47 and, probably going postal. There's just no way that being in the present moment, I think if you're more in the reptilian state, you're getting along, everything around you is more of an object, something that you have, and you're not available emotionally, you don't have an emotional connection to it, really, will cause you to allow these things to happen. In the present moment, you're going, oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. Oh, hell no. I'm not doing it. I'm not getting in contract with the city. Not getting in contract with my vet. I use the heartworm because it's the only thing that we have heartworm, and we travel to a lot of farming areas where, there is heartworm, and it's a really horrible thing to do to your dog to allow them to get heartworm. Anyway, so we're totally disconnected emotionally from everything. And we're not making choices in the present moment about what's going to happen. And people like myself, I'm sure there's, lots of people like me who have, different points of view, different thinking. We have to ride this crazy train with the collective population because the collective can't seem to wake up. And, I'm in contact with a friend of mine, Dane Wigington. A lot of people know who he is. And I'm just shocked at the kind of meanness and argumentativeness that people approach him with, right? I mean, this guy, once he found out about chemtrails like 20 years ago, he put all of his money, he put everything into it and traveling and trying to figure out ways to stop it. Right now, he's working with attorneys. They have a massive lawsuit going on in Canada with the Canadian government and military because they are finding that a lot of the heavy chemtrail spraying planes that hit the West Coast are coming out of that area or have been coming out of that area. And one of the things that Dane's talking about is that, we are at a point where in just a few more years, there isn't going to be anything growing. There aren't going to be trees. And there's other people that I know really well who are physicists and other people who have not been on my show, who I've talked to quite a bit, that talk about like 5 years ago and the oxygen levels on the planet. This 5 years ago in 2015 were -4. So with all the negative carbon, all the trees dying, all the landscapes being burned worldwide, we don't have enough oxygen in our atmosphere to breathe. So we wonder why right now the number one cause of death has something to do with respiratory. Almost everyone I talk to will say, oh, my dog just died. And I'll be like, well, what'd your dog just die of? Lung cancer. I mean, hello? Because there's not enough oxygen in the atmosphere. There's these heavy, particulates that are being sprayed on people. And nobody seems to care. And a lot of it has to do with this right brain function. They can't get in to the right hemisphere. They can't get into the right brain function. They can't get into the now and pay attention to what's going on. And all they're doing is trying to make enough money, have enough status, trying to, get to the future with when they retire. So they'll have, enough money to retire. But, what people don't tell them is probably right at the point of retirement, they'll have to retire because they have cancer, or they will have to retire. As soon as they retire, they drop dead. And so if your right brain is not functioning and it deals with your left side, it deals with the stuff going on in your left side, you could see how your heart could be offline for 30 years and it could get stretched out. It could start to leak. It could start to be affected with plaque because, if the right hemisphere is not available, it's not online because of all the post-traumatic stress events that have forced lateralization. Everything in your right side's not going to work. And it's going to decay rapidly. I see it time and time again. Or there's been damage to part of the brain. You could see that damage and how it reflects in the body. So, it's imperative for both sides of our body, both sides of our brain, for physically just to become a unified being. People talk about the unified field. Well, the unified field is not accessible because you're not even remotely a unified being. So how in the heck could you be operating in a unified field. You couldn't. There's just no possible way, because guess what? You are the unified field. And then you want to talk about the torus, right? Where, you know, like everything has a torus field. And if, you know, one side of your brain is not working, then that torus field is either coming out of that side and it's got a speed wobble on it, or it's not coming out at all. Because it's your brain that connects you with everything. You know, your left hemisphere connects you with all the physical stuff that's going on and how to operate in the system. And your right hemisphere is helping you to operate in everything that's not that. So, you know, all these systems don't work if you don't work. You know, they're just because, you know, that they know that they're there doesn't mean that they're operating right. So anyway, I was going to say something about, so last night, I got up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I was outside in the dark, and, you know, there wasn't really many people like walking around and no cars on the road, you know, and it's kind of in the middle, kind of close to downtown. It made me really start to think about, you know, how deep we are in a slave system, that they have control over our patterns. You know, they've controlled, like, okay, at night everybody sleeps, right? A majority of everybody sleeps, or at least goes inside, and they're not outside. And then during the day everybody's awake. You know, everybody's walking around or going to their jobs or doing whatever they're doing. And all of the patterns and like the programs that we are functioning in, and how, you know, the lack of people doing something else. And then I was thinking about, you know, I've spent a lifetime, you know, I have, I don't know, years of education in my field. I always tell people, if I could pull all the education together, you know, I probably would have 2 doctorates dealing with health. And all the different stuff that, you know, that I've studied and that have become a collage of my body of work. And so I think through that I'm a little bit different, because I've been forced, you know, like I'm way beyond alternative or holistic medicine. But I think because I've studied a lot of this kind of stuff, it's made me like stop and think a lot more about in the present moment, you know, in those moments where I just stop and I'm taking a look around and seeing it all. And I don't think that people actually stop to take a look around, and that they can't really critically think. There is no contemplation. You know, like in the old days, you know, well, even the mystery schools and stuff, a lot of those people, they, you know, had money, or were from families that had money. I mean, there has always been the slave, you know, kind of the slave system. But people were slower. There was more time for contemplation. You know, if you had to travel, you know, you'd be traveling for weeks. I had a friend of mine who in his 90s was on the first original cruise ships. He was, you know, would be like kind of a butler for certain people on the cruise ships. And for them to come from Europe to America, or, you know, to get wherever they were going to get. I mean, some of these, you know, processes were like 6 months long. And everything's so fast now that there's no time to like read a book or stare at the sky or, you know, even have your own thoughts. And the way that information is coming, it's so fast that it overrides your thoughts. I mean, that's the number one thing that totally horrified me about 5G. And I've had Mark Steele on, and a lot of, and he's the, you know, microwave weapons expert, a military microwaves expert, brilliant. And there's a lot of things we should be horrified about a 5G, but number one, that it's supposed to go faster than thought. So what's that telling you? That they're like now going to control your thought, which is going to dictate your behavior and is going to dictate how you carry out your life. And that's pretty scary, because so far, over the years, they've been strategic at putting things together of training. I look at public school. I went to public school. It's basically teaching you how to have a 9-to-5 job. The bell rings, you go in, you sit down at your desk or your station, your workstation. Then you get your donut break for 10 minutes. You get to leave the room, go have your donut break. Then you come back in and you work at your workstation. Then you go out for lunch. Then you come back in and finish your day, So, even though it's like from 9 to 2 or 9 to 3 or whatever it's going to be like, it still is preparing you for a 9-to-5 job. And, I talk to a lot of parents who, they have kids who, a lot of kids are being diagnosed with some type of autism. And a lot of that is because, the kid can't sit in the chair. The kid can't sit in the chair, doesn't want to sit in the chair, and is a little bit, defiant against the system and doesn't want to participate in that system this is how it's going to be and this is how it's going to go down. I don't know exactly when. I've studied a lot too about nutrition and genetic and heretical nutrition. One of the people that I've studied is Winston Price. When I went back to school for biodynamics, I had already been kind of, looking at Winston Price's work, but in biodynamics, or a lot of people in the Steiner movement, Winston Price and also Victor Schellenberger are big key components in their works. But our nutrition is like a serious problem. It's becoming more pharma. So nowadays I call food, PHUD. We no longer actually have FOOD, food. Because food would be a pharmacy, FARMACY. It's a pharmacy, right? Not a PH pharmacy. So one of the things about Winston Price's work is that he talked a lot about how he was a dentist, and what he started to do was that he started to notice like a lot of misaligned teeth in the U.S. culture, and he was starting to kind of put those together with a lot of chromosomal defects. And I've also worked in clinics where I've done structural medicine and energy medicine on people. And I've worked along people who are out of the box immunologists and different kinds of out of the box medical professionals. So I have actually worked in clinics with brilliant people as well, where I've actually been able to get more information and tie a lot of this together. But basically, Winston Price started traveling, and one of the things that he started doing was he started going out and documenting. I don't know if it was like the 40s or the 50s. I'm not sure exactly what the timeline for that work was, and he started going out and looking at tribal people, indigenous people, traveling and photographing and recording the teeth, the diet, and all of these mechanisms surrounding their environment and their daily diets and whatever else that they were doing. He found that indigenous people, they had no chromosomal damages, that their teeth were completely straight. So he started to realize, like, as people's teeth started becoming more and more crooked, as, generations were coming, you could see the blatant chromosomal and genetic damage that were done from the parent, because they had their bodies were starting to decay and become, genetically damaged. So he said once, like, white flour and especially sugar started to show up in cultures and diets, this is where you started to really see offspring that were being born, and when they developed their teeth, the crookedness of teeth, and you could tell, like, how severely the chromosomal damage was. So then you have, like, 5 generations since then, 4 generations or something like that since then. So you start to see a huge amount of people these days, kids that have severely crooked teeth. What's one of the number one practices in the U.S.? Oh, let's fix those teeth. So we can't, sort out. So, nobody knows, nobody talks about the dietary and environmental problems that have caused the genetic and chromosomal damage in the people, that is also lending to why in 5 children, have cancer, on top of the brain lateralization. So for me, I think a lot about that. People think that, somehow there's going to be this magical salvation, where Jesus comes, magical ascension, magical rapture, magical whatever else, is going to happen that is going to save us from, all the things that we've participated in creating. And it's not going to save us. We, have to save ourselves. And we have to start deciding what we want to participate in, how we want to live as a collective, how, our environment should be. And we have to do this whether there's money involved or no money involved. And I'll tell listeners out there, I, through, series of events, the biggest one being, my brain cancer, obviously, kind of severely for a while, kind of damaged my practice, my private practice. But, my private practice was pretty large at one point. I saw 6 to 7 people a day, sometimes 5 or 6 days a week. Took 3 months to get in to see me. And then when the state and government came after me in 2009 and started attacking me, trying to threaten me, trying to, run me out. And that went on until basically January 2014, which was a long legal, had to learn, who am I? And what am I about, and how to stand my ground in a world where, that's a very dangerous thing to do. And so, my private practice, was completely and totally destroyed. I still have some clients that have been with me for a long time, but I live with nothing. And most of the time I'm pretty glad about that. Is it rough? It is rough. But I have made choices about what's important to me and what's important now and what is important in the future. All right, so we're on break. We're going to mute out, and I'll see you back at one after. We're back with your host. Oop, I hear something. Okay. You're back with your host of the second hour of Wednesday edition, Carrying Stones, Digging Holes radio show. I am Bridgette Lyn Dolgoff, and I have a Wednesday edition and a Saturday edition. Wednesday edition is noon Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio. Saturday is 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. or 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio. And I am sick, so bear with me. And my guest also was not able to make it. And so I am just trying to maneuver the best way I can through my show today. So appreciate a pat on the back. No, just kidding. So anyway, you can go to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, and you can look at how to support us funding. And we have advertising, we have heirloom seed packets with vaults that, you can have for a long time that will stay good. Especially with, the things are getting ready to go down with our food situation. You might want to have, several vaults of seeds on hand. So that way, you can go out somewhere and grow some food. Also, we just take also regular donations. You can just slip us some capital. That would be fine too. And we appreciate it. Everyone that works, well, I guess we can't really call it work. We volunteer. Work indicates that we make an income, and none of us make an income on Revolution Radio. We all volunteer our time 100%, and our main bulk management, they work their bunzolies off. So, make sure that you keep us afloat and that our work is not in vain. Also on Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, you can go to schedule A, click on the schedule, click on schedule A, scroll down, you'll see the bee headed towards the flower thumbnail. Click on that and you can find information about my show and links, and also contact page. So if you want to contact me, you are more than welcome to do so. If you think that you're a good guest for my show, please contact me, and that would be great. Also, let's see. Also, I wanted to give a huge shout out to Mona, who has been covering my shows all summer long and now into the fall. I have 2 more classes left, and then I'm going to be done with my herbal second. I'm working on my second Dairy National Herbal Medicine certification. And then, so I'm just really glad that she can fill in on those once a month Saturdays and help me with my show so that I can get my certifications for wildcrafting and learning, how to create my own pharmacy. So I have my own pharmaceutical medicines from nature to help people and my clients. Hopefully too, and I've just been so busy, and I'm trying to gear and tool myself. I also have a website, coe-llc.com, and it's simple. Mind you, I build all my own websites, so they don't have a lot of bells and whistles and gadgets, but they, can put together the information. And I need to update my websites. I have 4 of them. Pertaining to different things, and hopefully in the next couple months I'll be able to have some time to be able to get those done. And I'm hoping to have a product page up. I do have a product page for more of my shamanism type medicines on Ministry of Consciousness Nevada.org, which is my nonprofit. And then the coe-llc.com. I hope to have my herbal medicines up, tinctures, and also I'm working on like a type of product line for pain, salves and things of that nature to help with muscle soreness and pain. And my inquiry and herbal medicine mostly is around finding, plants in nature. Mostly of them are indigenous plants that help with pain, autoimmune system diseases, and inflammatory disease. I'm not going to be making any lip balm or facial masks or anything like that. So I have just one area that, I'm interested in, and those are the plants that I work with. Okay. So second hour, was thinking a lot about how short our lifespan is, as, the industrial control is taking over and force us into left hemisphere, and what we're willing to do for a job and money. And, the government, because I'm not going to mention names, because sometimes, you mention things and things get shadow banned eventually, or blocked or taken down. Recently, I had one of my shows that I put up on my YouTube channel was blocked in like 4 or 5 countries. Was totally shocked. And they didn't like the Russian guy who was on my show talking about these technologies that he's building. So it was pretty interesting. So anyway, I have to do everything I can so that they don't have any rhyme or reason to ban my stuff. So I have to edit it a little bit better. It becomes more and more complicated so that they can't, just decide to do whatever they're going to do, and that I have, protocol, and I have, without a shadow of a doubt, I can fight them. Because they threaten you with things on YouTube that if you file a complaint against the person who's making a claim against you, and you lose, they'll take down your whole YouTube channel, But that's part of the industrialized, right? They control everything, and they want to do everything to control whatever kind of information decides to get out. So, what are we willing to do to work a job? So, recently in the last couple of years, we have, people coming out saying, oh, we have more jobs than ever before. The African American population, are more employed than they ever have been. Think about the stuff that they're saying. This is going to keep you, if you're in, let's just say in this incarnation, without, totally freaking a lot of people out, but say that, you come onto this planet and under really good conditions, you could live 200 years, right? This isn't far-fetched. I know Native people who are alive now that, I know that his father, who was a chief of the tribe, who lived to be 200 years. So this is not far-fetched, and it's not generations off. So under good conditions, which means the environment is good, the air is good, the water is good, the food is good, the community is good, it's supportive. You get to do the kind of job that you want to do. First, you have this upbringing, you're part of the community, you get to do all these different things in your environment with your people. It's a safe place. You're healthy. The genetics are good. Genetics are healthy. And everything is clean and emotionally good, emotionally ripe. And you develop. And then you're going to develop into, eventually, when the time comes and you become the adult and you are in your community, it's going to be pretty apparent what you're going to be good at and what you want to do and what you're passionate about. And you're going to, take your rightful place in the community, and you're going to do that work. Now, it's not going to be a job that you're going to get paid for, because you have abundant food. You have a great place to live. You have a great community that supports all the community in the way that it happens. You have the people, and this is what I love about, tribal community. is that they, they know, without a shadow of a doubt what your place is going to be in that community. I'm not saying that, maybe that's the perfect, paradigm for our future, but we have to really start, considering some of these alternatives where, our community is supported, whatever that community is, whatever the size of it is, wherever it's at and how it develops. Because even communities that are alternative to industrialized lifestyle are horrible. I've been on, I've lived on, been on, and worked for maybe a lot, 27 to 30 of them over, the last 27 years. And I can tell you that they are not perfect either. They have certain people who are in control. They have, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have rules. I mean, there should be basic rules. I really think in the future, I'm putting together a community, but it's going to be for retooling and reskilling combat veterans into biodynamic farmers, right? Whether they want to go back to the place that they live and do, urban farming or community farming, or if they want to go on to buy large-scale land and be able to produce, good quality biodynamic produced food. But one of the things that, we'll have to make certain of is that there's no alcohol. I found that, this is a problem. Alcohol can be a serious problem in any community. And so there has to be some basic foundations, and then everybody comes together and talks about, what's working for them, what's not working for them, and how we together as a community get things done. And that everybody is involved with the labor at some point, because it's the labor that is the most difficult on the land, especially on the food production end. But a lot of these communities that I've seen, been on, worked on, did some consulting, whatever else, are horrible. I mean, I've lived in ashram settings where you come in, you're new, and there's a whole hierarchy of people above you. And you would think it'd be this really peaceful setting, I could trust people, I could really let go and do some big spiritual work. But these people are, going through your things and taking your toothpaste and, creating, a very unsafe condition for you. And so, even if you're there to do spiritual work, it's very difficult for you to do spiritual work, because, people rifling through your things is just not a positive experience. It'd be one thing to say, hey, do you have some toothpaste I could use? But, to come back and have your stuff in your bag disheveled all over and have things missing is a whole other, thing. So, and then you go to complain or, talk to somebody about the situation, and, they give you the attitude that you just need to kind of get over it. And there is no, kind of general support or, basic foundation of rules. And so a lot of the communities that are out there are not what I feel, are the kind of communities are going to last the long haul. And they're not going to be able to help people, make the change that's going to be necessary. I think a lot of it's going to have to be individual. One of the things I'm doing now is I'm looking into a couple different places where people have taken over large pieces of land from land foundations, and the land is looking bad because of the sterilization of the chemtrails. And so the forest areas on the land, the trees are, starting to turn brown on the ends, and there's not a lot of certain types of indigenous species growing, which is not a good thing either. And in some cases, you can't even find even a dried mushroom anywhere. So one of the things that I'm doing personally right now is I'm looking at putting together some proposals so that I can, maybe work with these people on my own, go into these areas and start making microbial mass medicine, which is something that I do. I've been working on it for a long time. And then start spraying the areas in order to get enough microbes into these areas, whether it's, so that the soil can start to regenerate and support life, and also be able to heal the trees. Because I think it's going to be like, people in the past have said, like one of the things is they say like, I'm not like a big, I like Rudolf Steiner and I like some of the work that he's put out and he presents. His specialty was nutrition. Amazing person in nutrition and plant medicines, anthroposophy plant medicines. I did a 3-year online study course with anthroposophy plant medicines, with anthroposophy medicine, and studied a lot of nutrition, did, biodynamics, which is about, land restoration, soil restoration, medicines to do that. And, what's said is that I'm not a big follower of Waldorf or a lot of these other concepts, and I'm not what I would call sorry about that. I'm not a cultist, and I think that a lot of Steiner stuff, there is a lot of cultist stuff going on, and so I'm not a cultist with Steiner. But one of the things that's said is that, Steiner could see 500 years in the future because he also was a psychic or a mystic and also was a very well-educated person with health and nutrition and these things. And so basically when he was approached by the farmers, early turn of the century, 1900s, about what was going on, they were already starting to see the detriment of the soil in the industrialized areas like Germany and Austria and places like that. And they came to him and said, we need to, the seeds are already starting to not be as fertile and viable, and a lot of other things, right? The crops are not as good. They're not as strong. We're having a lot of other problems. We can already see the demise. And so one of the things that Steiner did was he, basically traveled 500 years in the future. He also has huge information about the vaccines that were to come as well. It's interesting, like how so few people have even viewed this work. It just blows my mind. But one of the things he did was he went 500 years in the future, and he was given these, we call them, sorry, the cold is influencing my mind. We call them, I could see the word, but I can't say it. Isn't that crazy? We were given the medicines and how the medicines are made, and you put them into the ground and they go through different seasons, and then there's an annual time where you pull them up out of the ground and then you use them, you spray them on different areas, and it helps to reinsert the microbial mass into the soil. But and in the 500 years when Steiner went into the future and they pulled these preparations back and gave the preparations on all this information, mind you, during this time frame, this information was considered witchcraft. So these farmers, put together these biodynamic farming books based on the information that Rudolf Steiner gave them, because Steiner wasn't really interested in farming. He was interested in nutrition. But because he could see there's going to be a big problem, one of Steiner's most famous quotes is something like, you keep eating from unhealthy soil, and you're going to be trapped in the prison of your body. So this is the deal. I tell people, there's no possible way that you're going to spiritually ascend when your body is sick. And whatever, you can be nutritionally depleted, which most people are, and hallucinate. A hallucination is not the same as spiritual visions. It's not even in the same category. If your thyroid is not operating well, especially in women, you're not taking enough iodine, you can be seriously hormone influenced into stress periods and paranoia and a lot of other types of things. And I know this from a really amazing man who was a shaman down in Peru that I got to talk to on several occasions, like 5 or 6 years ago. And he said that one of the first things that he does when people come down, to study with him, he puts them through these different tests, but he also takes a look at the condition of their body, because if they have a lot of nutritional deficiencies that he can see, that he has to kind of send them back and have them, go on certain kinds of diets to build up those nutrients in their bodies, because no matter work that he does with them spiritually is going to help them, because they're so hormonally off that they're hallucinating and they're having, these spiritual experiences, even being trafficked by spirits or whatever else, or thinking, that your, roommate is doing something or your husband's doing something that's not being done. And you think that this is like some kind of intuition. It's not. It's actually caused from deficiencies of the body because of diet. So he said that, he'll send them back and have them, go through pretty heavy protocols of nutrient density in order to get their bodies like at least into a framework where he can take them into the spiritual realm and move them forward in that spiritual realm. So when Steiner was looking 500 years into the future, he started to see a whole bunch of stuff, like these vaccines that were coming out. He saw that like about 2100, that it was going to be really hard to ignore, and there were going to be huge areas on the earth that not only couldn't support any living thing, but could not support growing food. And that as things went more and more, that there would be very few areas, little patches of areas where people would be living and growing food around the world. And only those with the preparations and the information of the biodynamic farming could these areas be restored and kept and where people could live. And so because I can't go out and save the world, and nobody's really interested in learning a lot of what I know, a lot of the work that I do, a lifetime of accumulation, I'm age 50 now, of this work and information, especially with the soil and landscape and these kinds of things. Now I'm looking at going to, land refuge, like here on the West Coast, looking at different places that have been gifted to be caretaked, and being able to go in there and teach the people who are caretaking about what they have to do now. You can't just be there on the land and try to take down the old trees and do simple things and create ponds and, do water harvesting. Now you're going to have to go to the next extreme in order to not only save what's growing there, but also be able to plant new stuff. It's got to have soil that it can actually thrive in. So anyway, so that's kind of like, what I'm doing now, which, doesn't guarantee a paycheck. But like, it goes back to the first hour. I'm just flabbergasted that nobody seems to care. Nobody seems to care that the environment is dying. It's pretty much non-salvageable at this point. There's a lot of people that are in agreement to this. And so working this job from 9 to 5 for the industrialized people to make a living, going back to how, if everything is going to end. About 5 years ago, I came to this point after, talking to Dane. If everything's going to, come to a screeching halt and I'm going to die, how is it that I want to do that? Do I want to do that by working for somebody else and they're making money off my life essence and off my back? And also, while they're, while I'm working so much, I can't pay attention to what's going on, and they're basically stealing all the resources possible and damaging the earth so severely that nothing will be livable? Or do I want to educate myself and go out there and be on the battleground and actually doing work to try to at least save it, save the environment, save whatever possibly that I could save, regardless if I can keep a roof over my head, regardless if I'm going to be forced to live under a bridge, regardless. And that's how I felt, was like nothing that they could dangle in front of me at this point would be enough for me to play by their rules or to be underneath their thumb. That's just how I feel. So, you have the government, all these people talking about how there's more jobs. Well, who do these jobs belong to? These jobs belong to the industrialists, pretty much, that have been running this world. The oil, the auto car manufacturers, the this manufacturer, the that manufacturer, and all those things take resources. They're accumulating and amassing what's left of the resources. And so you're making a living that's not worth your living, right? And you have to be under these astringent rules. And you got to be there Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. And this is how much we'll give you for your life essence. And it's going to shorten your life. But you've been sold that you have to have a roof over your head. You have to make money. You've got to have a car. You've got to have insurance. Every time you turn around, they have a new fee added on. I mean, all these small fees at some point, will just take everything that you have. I mean, they've figured out ways to actually take every last bit of money that you make. I mean, I've been pretty much living in a car since 2006 and a van for like the last 7 years that I've kind of built into a little house. And there were times that I, was terrified. I worked on, I do animal health care, and I do old school, hands-on chiropractor adjustments to animals. I studied with a man who developed these techniques like 40 or 50 years ago. I directly studied with him to learn how to do it. And so I had some people who asked me to come out to the desert, to their horse farm and trade, that I'd live in like a travel trailer. And then, trade out during the winter, taking care of some of their horses that needed help. They had a couple that were had been hurt and had been traumatized, and so that's kind of like what I was doing. But when I moved out there, and the trailer was not a good trailer, it was old. It didn't always have power. It got down to 7 degrees for like 3 weeks, in which I didn't have heat. And through this time, it's like one of those bucket list checkoffs, like I'm terrified. I did get really, really sick. I wasn't really prepared for, how cold it was going to get. It helped me to get over a period of fear of making the change from, having money, making money, and trying to make a living to supposedly live, instead of living, as in thriving, which is using my mind and my body and my emotions to, be conscious and contemplate and be able to use, my training and the kind of things that I wanted to do for work, whether that made me a living or not. And I still don't get support, what barely, it's interesting to me that people can put up GoFundMes and stuff like that, and they can get quite a bit of funding for something really stupid. But yet somebody like me who is actually doing really good work and who understands what's going on and whatever else, couldn't even get $5. And I think that's also part of, the industrialized parallel reality, right? Once you're out of that system, you're out of that system, and that system is not going to support you any way, shape, or form, no matter what you think you're alternatively doing. And you're not going to be able to make an income at it. So I've just gotten to the place where I don't spend a lot of time trying to get what I need or stay afloat. I just live with what I have. And that means that, I don't have a roof over my head, or I don't have, exactly the kind of food that I want to eat, or I don't have the money, to travel to do a lot of the work that I do. But I continue to educate myself, and I continue to keep working and keep moving forward, and to try to figure out how to save, what I can, to educate people, to at least start trying to make the turn, try to understand what they've been doing, and, being able to make a change out of that. So all these jobs, and these jobs that we supposedly have in the U.S. and the markets and blah, 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 blah. These are industrialized jobs. These are people who have been making money off people since time immemorial, and, so who cares about the jobs? Who cares about, your $10 an hour job? I know that you do at this point in time. And I know that making a transition out of that whole mindset and making a transition out of how mind controlled that you've been and how scary that is, to wake up to those truths. But if more of us don't start waking up to these truths and quitting this system so that we can start working together to try to create a system that is going to be more beneficial for us, we're in trouble. We're in serious trouble. The UN is already starting talking about, the whole food shortages worldwide. Why do we think we have all these people running into America right now? We're like one of the last places that has food that's available so that people can get food. People would be shocked at what they give away at the food banks these days. It's pretty shocking, but that's going to come to a screeching halt coming in 2020, considering 99% of all the food is actually imported into the U.S. from other countries. And as the financial system is crumbling before our eyes and people are not paying attention to it because it's negative news or they can't deal with it or they work too many hours to try to stay afloat, you're going to be woke up and you're not going to have anything. And we have to really start waking up to. And you know what the thing is, like, I have no idea what the perfect community is. I have no idea what working together means. I have no idea what these things mean. I mean, when I go to school, I go up to Nevada City in Grass Valley, California, and to me, they look like they've got a pretty good handle. You have a lot of people who won't live high on the hog. That's not what they want to do. They want to have more personal time. They want to have more creative time. They're willing to live with like much less. They're very much into the environment. They're also very much into the community and participating with each other and going back to learning, more life skills like growing food and skills, that they don't have. And the one thing that is most amazing about that area is that everyone is happy. No matter where you go, everyone is smiling. Doesn't matter if it's a store, doesn't matter if you're driving by them, doesn't matter if you meet them on the street corner, doesn't matter if you meet them at somebody's house. The one distinctive thing that you can tell from that area is that everybody is smiling and happy, which means they are closer to living an ideal lifestyle than anybody else. And so I love going there because I love to go there for a week of school because everybody is so unbelievably happy. And where I'm from, everybody is so unhappy and so agitated and so angry and so violent and so hostile, and so aggressive. So I know that they are starting to do something right. And Nevada City recently came out and they're blocking 5G. They are the number one and only place in America to have outright banned it. And the reason why something like that happens is because the community was involved and said, no, we are awake enough to know that this is not going to be what we want to have in our area. It is not going to make us happy. It's going to kill us and it's going to cause great harm. And we refuse. We outright refuse to participate in it. Anyway, I wanted to play one of the people that I watch. He's called the Robin Hood of Wall Street. It's about 15 minutes. It's a special report that he put out. He puts out 2 reports on the stock market a day, free of charge on YouTube. Gregory Marinero, sorry, my cold brain is not working. But I wanted to play this for you about what the Federal Reserve is involved in doing right now, and they are not telling the public about it. And it is so unbelievable that I just really feel like people should really hear it because it's shocking. And it means, and our bonds, which are debt bonds, that's how we sell other countries our bonds. No other country is buying anything we have anymore in the U.S. And should we be put out of business? We should absolutely. The United States, for what they have done worldwide, should absolutely, positively be put out of business. That at some point in time, these other countries that we have raped and destroyed need to come up to fair market value. They need to come up with and help their people. And in that, the U.S. petrodollar has to be destroyed. It just has to be put out of business, or the war machine is just going to continue on. I have no doubt about that. And it's getting ready to happen, where the rest of the world over the last 40 years has decided not to participate anymore. They've created new digital banking systems. They have gold platforms. The U.S. has none of that because, you know what? The United States just keeps thinking it can keep doing the same thing, stealing other people's oil and then selling it back to other countries and the public for nothing, and keep continuing to do these things. that are not good. Not good for the citizens of the U.S., not good for the citizens of the world. So anyway, I just want to play this, and I'll come back on as soon as it's done before the end of the show. So thanks so much. Hold on one second.
All right, everybody, it's me, Gregory Matarino. It is still Monday, September 23rd, 2019, and when I tell you this time we have to talk, I mean it. If this particular video blog doesn't blow your mind, well, I don't know what will moving forward here. That's the truth. People, we are on the threshold of something absolutely monumental. And if you notice, this says blank. Why does it say blank there? Well, I don't want to put any ideas in your head. I want you to listen to this video blog. And I want you to make up your own mind, use your own intellect to put a perspective on what you believe is about to happen. Here we go. Let's start off with the basics. Stocks were all over the place today. With regard to the Dow Jones Industrial Average, we had a triple-digit loss, a triple-digit gain. The real action was in the bond market. An epic amount of bond buying this morning. I mean, off the Richter scale, which seemed to calm down throughout the day. How did stocks end? The Dow Jones Industrial Average finished essentially flat with a fractional gain. S&P 500 in the negative, NASDAQ in the negative. Okay, that's all well and good. What's underlying this entire thing? I want to read something to you. And I'm going to, as a matter of fact, what I'm about to read to you is so important. I'm going to place a link in the description of this video, and I want you to read it for yourself. I don't want you to think Greg is making stuff up. I know you don't, but here we go. Let's do this. This statement, what I'm reading to you here, is from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Okay. Bear with me here. I'm just going to read a little bit, but it is really important. Statement regarding repurchase operations. We know, you and me, and it's pretty much public knowledge, the Federal Reserve has decided to issue massive capital injections into the financial sector to stabilize the debt market and to recapitalize the banks. That alone should tell you that something is very, very wrong. Now, when I read more of this to you, I'm sure you will agree. Again, this is from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Operating policy statement regarding repurchase operations dated September 20, 2019. In accordance with the Federal Open Market Committee, FOMC, directive issued September 18, 2019, the Open Market Trading Desk, in brackets, the desk, at the Federal Reserve Bank of New York will conduct a series of overnight and term repurchase agreement, repo, in brackets, operations to help maintain the federal funds rate within the target range. Okay. So what did we learn here from this statement? The Federal Reserve, number one.
Trying to learn a language? Learn lightning fast with the Innovative Language 101 app. Download it now for free.
Is admitting that they have a trading desk. It's called the desk. The reason why I'm bringing this up especially is because I've mentioned this for years. I have taken flack from people who have called me straight out a liar. Greg, you are a liar. The Federal Reserve does not have a trading desk. Well, right here on this statement, read it for yourself. It's called the desk, okay? They have a desk. Now, what most people don't understand, and again, I'm going right off of this paper, right from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. So, again, it's common knowledge. Beginning on Monday, the 23rd of this month, the Federal Reserve started with a $75 billion capital injection bailout for the banks, plural. The same banks which run them. We understand that. Now, what people don't understand, starting the 24th, right through till today, and it will continue until October 10th, there's no cap. At least 75 billion per day. At least. Look at this for yourself. And again, this will continue until the 10th of next month. Now, the question is very simple. I don't think anyone's talking about it. What happens after that? The Federal Reserve right now is doing a mirror image of what they did during the financial crisis. Massive capital injections into the system just to keep it afloat. And this should tell you something, that once the Fed stops, again, there's no cap here, at least 75 billion per day. It's going to continue for a while, till the 10th of next month. What happens when they stop? I believe sincerely that there is the potential for the bond market to have a fit like you have no idea. Again, if you follow this blog, you know better than anybody else, probably period, anywhere, that this market, and I'm not just talking about the stock market, because everything is getting valued off of what's happening in the debt market, okay? It's a bubble beyond. So, the debt market here is an addict. It's demanding that more debt be printed out of thin air, added to a digital screen to prop it up. This is keeping stocks inflated. This is keeping the housing bubble inflated. This has manifested itself in a multiple bubble environment like we have never seen. There's nothing like this before. So what the Federal Reserve, I assume, wants you to believe that after these capital injections, no cap, all the way through till the 10th, once they stop, everything's going to be just fine. How many of you would be willing to bet that that's not the case at all? Yeah, exactly. Probably every single one of you who follow this blog. The Federal Reserve is going to automatically just stop feeding the beast, feeding this monster. That's what it is. The debt bubble is a financial Frankenstein, unlike anything the world has ever seen before. On the back of that, we've seen the reinflating of a stock market bubble and a housing bubble. And all this is a massive setup for a transfer of wealth on an unprecedented scale. Now, we also understand that we are going to get rate cuts, more than likely zero or in the negative, if our president gets his wish. What does that mean? Massive debt expansion, again, on a scale that we have never seen before. Just like I explained to you what happened from a very, very long time ago. So, and I want to leave you off with this. Now that we understand, or at least we have somewhat of an understanding, we don't know what the Federal Reserve is actually doing. We know that right now, today, there's going to be at least $75 billion capital injection today. At least $75 billion. It could be $100 billion. It could be $500 billion. We don't know. Okay? Whatever they want it to be today, that's what it could be. They have no cap. They're going to continue this all the way through until the 10th. And then after that, what happens? Do we fall into the abyss? Again, the monster must be fed. And this is what we're seeing. It's the market demanding that it be fed. Now, talking about the market being fed, how about we heard from Fed President Bullard today. What he said was very interesting. If you know about Bullard, he was one of the people that was calling for a 50 basis point cut to the federal funds rate. We got 25. Bullard is saying that the market, the stock market, is going to demand more debt issuance. Really? I think Mr. Bullard is way behind the curve, because I know that you knew that way before Bullard had to have it come out of his mouth. And how did you know that? Because I've been explaining this to you, and pretty much everything I've been explaining to you is actually happening. So what we need to be thinking about here, people, is what happens after the 10th when the Federal Reserve supposedly ends their massive capital injections, their bank bailouts. Let me ask you, who gives them the right to have a blank check right now Do you hear a single member of Congress talking about this? Do you hear the President of the United States saying, hold on a second, this is the people's money?
Google and Facebook track you and save every piece of information they find, which is creepy. But not everyone.
Money. So how is the Federal Reserve allowed to do what they're doing right now? Again, we do not have a free market. Could you imagine if the Federal Reserve were not doing what they're doing right now? What do you think the debt market would be doing? It's very simple. It would be determining fair value on its own. It's not allowed to do that. That's why the Federal Reserve is doing what it's doing right now, massive capital injections, at least $75 billion per day. If the market were allowed to dictate fair value, no one on this planet is smart enough to know where yields would be, and subsequently what the stock market would be doing right now. I'm gonna speculate out here. If the Federal Reserve did not step in on the 23rd of last month with these massive capital injections, and the debt market were allowed to set fair value for debt, and it were not being artificially suppressed, we would have seen rates spike at an unprecedented pace. And what would that have done? It would have cut the stock market in half since the 23rd. You're not supposed to know that, but that's where we would be right now today. So, knowing what I just said, I want you to think about, like I started this video off, I want you to think about these things on your own. What's going to happen, or what do you believe is going to happen after the 10th when the Fed stops their capital injections with their blank check that's been given to them by you? I want you to think about that. It's on your back. All this debt, you own it. Your children own it. It's being piled on right now, and not one politician, especially not the president, will say that maybe we should rein some of the spending in. Oh no. That's because the stock market must be propped up at all costs, and you are going to subsidize it no matter how loud you scream or cry. You must support the debt. You must bear the burden of this. Your children have no choice. None. Zero. I want you to think about that. And you will be forced to subsidize this stock market until the breaking point. And when it breaks, your investment plans, your 401ks, whatever makes money on the long end of this market is going to be legally stolen as the Wall Street banks that are now being recapitalized short the entire market, just like the guy you're looking at here. So you're hearing it from the horse's mouth, okay? That cash is going to be removed, legally stolen from your account and transferred to the Wall Street banks and to guys like me. I know you like me. I really do. But I don't think you like me that much, and I'm not the only one that's going to benefit here, because that is what's being set up, and you're hearing it from a guy who will be on the opposite side of that trade. So you are being set up. You're a pawn in a very dangerous game, and maybe a fraction of 1% of you has the guts to speak out about it, to maybe share this video, to maybe start a blog, to maybe tweet them.
All right, anybody, we're at the end of Karen Stone's Digging Holes radio show, Revolution Radio. That was Gregory Marinero. Sorry, I just can't talk. I've just been so sick. And that was a special report must watch that he put out on his YouTube channel a few days ago. And you know what is going to happen on October 10th with this blank check and how much money that the feds are dumping into the banks. And it's not talked about. It's not discussed. People don't know about it. And so it's not looking good, folks. And you keep participating and working in the machine and feeding the machine. And these are the consequences. So anyway, hope you wake up. And so we can create, a different story. And in the present moment, create a different future. All right. Got to go. Have a great couple days. We'll see you on Saturday. Bye.